Good morning and welcome to this thought for the day for Monday. And last week on Easter Monday we were continuing to look at the Easter story, and although in church we've moved on to a new series in the book of Colossians, in the church's calendar we're still in the season of Easter, and our reading this morning is another reading from John's Gospel, which is one of the resurrection stories. It's John chapter 20 and beginning at verse 1. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the entrance. So she came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one Jesus loved, and said, "They've taken the Lord out of the tomb and we don't know where they've put him." So Peter and the other disciple started for the tomb. Both were running, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent over and looked in at the strips of linen lying there, but did not go in. Then Simon Peter, who was behind him, arrived and went into the tomb. He saw the strips of linen lying there, as well as the burial cloth that had been around Jesus' head. The cloth was folded up by itself, separate from the linen. Finally, the other disciple who'd reached the tomb first also went inside. He saw and believed. They still did not understand from Scripture that Jesus had to rise from the dead. Then the disciples went back to their homes. It's one of these number of stories which in some ways it's difficult to reconcile one with another, and it tells of Mary Magdalene going to the tomb and finding it empty and coming running to Peter and the one Jesus loved, which we assume refers to John, and they went running off to see for themselves what it was that Mary had brought news of, and one builds up a little bit of a picture of these disciples, and I don't know whether John was younger than Peter, but he certainly seemed to have been fitter, and we can sort of visualize Peter puffing along in his wake and arriving at the tomb with a bit of a stitch in his side and breathing heavily, but the disciple Jesus loved, John, was on the outside, and Peter, when he arrived, went blundering in with typical Peter sort of get up and go attitude. And so they discover the tomb empty and the linen cloths that have been around Jesus still lying there, and they saw and believed, John writes, but they still didn't understand from Scripture that Jesus had to rise from the dead. We were thinking last week of the process by which they came to grasp what had happened, what was going on, and how it took a little while for the penny to drop. And this was before Jesus had appeared to them in the upper room. This is the beginning of the story, and so it begins to unfold. And so they put one piece together with another and build up the jigsaw. And of course, when they saw Jesus, it made quite a lot of the difference. If we'd gone on to read in this chapter, we'd have seen how Jesus appeared to Mary Magdalene and she thought that he was the gardener, another jigsaw piece in the story. And you'll be aware that over the years, numbers of people have looked at the resurrection and sought either to prove it or to disprove it. And one of the famous books is Frank Morrison's Who Moved the Stone, which is a book which was written by a reporter who went to disprove the resurrection by looking into all of the facts and finished up writing a book which spoke of how he had become convinced by the evidence that Jesus really did rise from the dead. And it's expedient that we should put together the jigsaw pieces so as to get a picture in our own minds about the truths of the resurrection, to realise that the facts do stack up and come to a really convincing conclusion that Jesus was risen. And if that's not something you've ever done, then I hope that you'll take the time to do it. Find one of the books like Who Moved the Stone. There are plenty of others which have been written by people just to go through the evidence and come to a conclusion. And it's good that we should have that in our armoury, a certainty in our own minds that the historical facts do stack up, that it's not just that we know that Jesus is alive because we experience him in our own lives now, but that he is that same historical Jesus who was crucified on the cross, put in the tomb, and then mysteriously disappeared from the tomb and appeared to his disciples over a period of 40 days. It's a great story, and it bears close examination, and we rush on each year from Easter onto the next thing, often without stopping to think about the facts and to weigh them up for ourselves. And so I encourage you to do it. Have a great week, have a great day, and God bless you.